student loan borrowers might be getting a lump of coal from the Biden administration this winter. The Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on the president's student loan handout in February. And legal analysts say the justices could kill the executive order for good. So will this go down as another Biden failure? And what does it mean for America's cash-strapped college grads? Juan, I'll go to you. I mean, I think this was a mistake by Biden, but I don't think he's going to admit his mistake because this administration, even more so than Obama, they won't admit any mistake. They just act like everything's going swimmingly. So he's going to get this thing knocked down, and he doesn't care. He's going to, they'll try something else. What do you think, Juan?
I think he'll keep trying because I think right now it's very popular, surprisingly popular. It's more than 50% of Americans support the idea of loan forgiveness for students. They think it's good. And so I think Biden in particular, as he pursues the youth vote, is going to be aggressive about trying to say the court's wrong. In fact, I think he'll beat up on the court and say, hey, look, this is the court that took away your abortion rights, that's trying to make it easier to carry guns openly, and now they're taking away student forgiveness, student debt forgiveness. I mean, and you just make it out. This is a far-right court that's out of touch with public opinion because public opinion's on his side in this case.
Carol, don't we have, I mean, we have Congress makes the laws, not the executive branch, but we've gotten into this thing
right?
where, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they don't care anymore. Executive branch, they'll just pass a law and then, go for broke.
Right. I don't think the Biden administration cares one bit that this plan won't really go through. They got to run in the midterms on kids, we'll send you cash. And that's really all that matters here. They were going to take money from working class Americans who didn't go to college and hand it to doctors and lawyers who did. And so, the polls show that people like free cash. Like, wow, really? That's so surprising, Juan. And, there were several polls also showing that people who were slated to receive that $10K were planning to spend it on travel and going out to dinner. Hope they didn't spend it already.
That's true. Look, I like to travel. I like to go out to dinner. But Spike, I know the figures that Juan cited. I mean, I don't want to argue with him. He's he knows what he's talking about. But from my perspective, I think most Americans don't like the idea of giving money to overeducated individuals at the expense of blue-collar workers.
Oh, and I agree with that. I think that any polling can show whatever you want it to, depending on how you word it. If you word it that way, it's going to be less than 50%. If you say, would you like to help students in the with the student debt crisis to be able to afford their tuition through student loan forgiveness, then you'll probably get around 50 or more percent. The reason the Supreme Court is likely to rule that this is illegal is for a very simple reason. It's illegal. The president can't do this without approval from Congress. There's no law or anything written that gives him any authority to do this. And I think the reason so many people want something like this is because they recognize that there is a tuition crisis and a student debt crisis. Those were created by the government. And there are two ways, really the only two ways that we're going to be able to solve it moving forward. Number one, the government needs to get out of the lending business because right now lending underwriters are giving whatever loan they want to because they know that it's not their bottom line that's going to be affected when the loans go sour, and also to allow for bankruptcy so students can discharge their student loan debt in bankruptcy court, which is something that Joe Biden, as a senator, fought to block with laws that were passed in the 80s and 90s. Get rid of all of that so they can do that. And if you do that, lenders are only going to be able to lend what they know they'll be able to reasonably expect to get back, which means that the universities are going to have to charge what they recognize that the students can actually afford. And if you have a student, whether it's passed by Congress or done illegally by the president, if you forgive these loans, which is basically paying them off, it's only going to encourage more and even worse predatory and opportunistic lending and tuition practices by universities and lenders. We need to get government out of it, not more into it.
Yeah, and before we go, Carol, I think Republicans as well, Republican voters, they get frustrated with the gridlock in Congress, and they turn to their president. When Trump was in office, they wanted him to just do things by executive order. So it's not just a Democrat thing. I think a lot of people, because they lack patience, they don't want to wait for a law to be passed. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to get back to a place where Congress is making the laws. I feel like we've gotten so far away from it. You know, my kids learn civics in school here in Florida, and I feel like they're not living it at all in their country. I think you're absolutely right. Both parties have gotten addicted to the idea that the president could just sign whatever he wants and get anything that they want passed.
Yeah.
We really need to step back from it. We're heading in a bad direction, and this is such a great example of that.
I remember the old the things on Saturday morning. I'm just a bill, and they taught us how it was done.
That's
and
right.
they said the executive branch, he can't pass
Not
laws.
no more.